Welcome back to Self-Dom Beautiful Humans. I am so excited for today's guest. I've been following her for a very long time, in awe of everything that she cooks. I have Brooke Kelly. She is a clinical nutritionist sharing her love for nourishing food on her Instagram. So she's inspired a lot of my cooking, and I know you guys follow me for that. So you're going to love this episode today. She creates the rainbow on all her plates, and she also shows that you don't need hours to cook a healthy meal. So the reason I really wanted to have Brooke on the app is that there is so much information online about what's right to eat, how to cook, different diets, and it can be so overwhelming. So I thought it is so important to have a nutritionist on the pod to talk about all her tips and tricks to living your healthiest and happiest life. And yeah, I'm excited because I have someone who's just as passionate about food in the room with me. So today's ep, I'm going to be asking Brooke about a healthy day on a plate, what her non-negotiables are when it comes to nutrition, and so much more. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the pod, Brooke.
Thank you for having me, and that was very sweet. I feel really flattered.
You're so cute.
Yeah.
It was actually interesting. I was just talking to Brooke off the pod. It's always when you have the good conversation. And she was saying that what kind of started her journey into nutrition was she used to do modeling back in the day.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to dive this little extra bit of information I have. I'm like, what questions should I ask? So I always like to ask my guests how they got into their field. So what was your journey into the wonderful world of nutrition?
So my journey into the wonderful world of nutrition has been a very complex one. So like I said to you earlier, I did model for a little bit when I was younger, after school. But even prior to that, my kind of health journey started. So essentially, I got quite sick when I was younger in school. And it took kind of like a whole year for us to kind of figure out what was going wrong with me. But essentially, I would turn up at school every day, and I just remember sitting and having lunch, and I just had this knot in my stomach. Like every single thing I was eating at the time was making me feel really nauseous. And this is kind of before I knew anything about health or gut health, which is kind of what I specialize in now. And I just kind of played it down, and I thought, maybe I'm stressed, or maybe I'm intolerant to gluten or dairy or something. And I ended up going to the doctor, and funnily enough, I did a stool test at the time, which is a little bit TMI.
I feel like at the time it was TMI, but I honestly talk about poop all the time.
Me too. I literally so I see clients every day, and I'm sometimes I'll be just talking straight about poo.
Yeah.
And they're just they're a bit awkward about it, so I always have to remind myself. But yeah, I feel like I talk about it every day too. But basically they found that I had a parasite, which was crazy because I hadn't been away, to a tropical island, or I hadn't, changed the way I was eating, but somehow managed to pick up this parasite. So they gave me a massive course of antibiotics, which is kind of how they treat parasites. And then I didn't really get better. So it was kind of weird. So I remember coming home from school a week after taking these antibiotics and feeling way worse. And I just started to drop weight rapidly. And it got to the point where I was very, very underweight and very unwell. And I remember at the time too, with girls in school, because I was about 16, obviously it is really common, and I will say pre-trigger warning, in school, girls' schools particularly, there is eating disorders and some disordered eating habits that can be common amongst younger women, especially, in the world we live in now. So I remember a lot of people were saying, she's not eating, and all these things. And I just remember feeling so lost, and I didn't know what to do because I had been to all these doctors and had all these different advice of what was going on with me, and they basically couldn't figure it out. So it took a whole year, and then I was really lucky that I was in and out of hospital during that time, which was quite scary. But one doctor did a special test on me and found out that I had another thing called Clostridium difficile, which is a crazy name, but it's a bacteria that can grow when you treat your gut with too many antibiotics. So I had the parasite, and then I took all these antibiotics, and then I ended up getting this crazy bacteria, which was eating all my food and making me drop weight and very, very ill. And so ironically, the thing that we had to do to fix it was to give me more antibiotics, but like specific antibiotics. And I immediately started getting better and I started getting healthier. And long story short, you know, I just went back to school and like just kind of tried to catch up and, you know, get my life back together. And I started to get sick again. And I was kind of like, what is going on? Like, there's just, I thought I treated this, like, you know, I thought I was, you know, healthy. And then I remember like one day like fainting at school and I got sent to hospital and I had like no hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is like your red blood cells in your body. And, you know, we usually eat iron and iron helps us make hemoglobin. So that's our red blood cells. And I had like no iron and no hemoglobin. And I had to get 3 blood transfusions and an iron infusion.
Were you having your period at this time?
No, because I was so unwell. So I didn't have my cycle for years for a number of reasons. And so essentially what happened was I, you know, had to get these blood transfusions and I was kind of like, why is this happening? Like, I don't understand. And then, you know, I went and saw a couple of more specialized functional medical doctors and they kind of helped me and opened my eyes up into the world of like functional medicine and nutrition. So before I was seeing all these doctors and they were kind of like, we don't really know what's causing this. And I went to this doctor and, you know, I ended up working for her and she's still my mentor today.
Wow. So how old were you, sorry, at this time?
I was 18 at this time, so I was in year 12.
I feel like no one was talking about nutrition. It was
No.
like, how old are you?
I'm 27 now, which is crazy. It's
So
10 years ago now.
Well, we're similar age and I feel like at that time it was low carb and all these different things. Like no one was talking about nutrition. And it's amazing that you, like as a silver lining, it got you in touch with a functional doctor. Like that's a major silver lining.
Yeah, and it's such a silver lining because it is now the reason I do what I do. And the trauma and the horrible medical experience I went through was the thing that has given me, a love and a passion for like people like getting to like the root cause of their health concerns. And basically she kind of opened my eyes because she was like, have you ever heard about like gut health and things like that? And at the time it was quite new and I was like, what do you mean gut health? Like my gut's either like good or it's bad. And she goes, no, like your gut has millions and trillions of bacteria in it and like it can get out of balance and your gut suffered a lot of trauma. So you're not absorbing anything you're eating. And, you know, she kind of put me on this special therapeutic diet and I started to get better and it was incredible. So then I was like, I must go study this because I wanted to learn more and I also wanted to like improve my own health. And yeah, I went and studied nutrition. And then at the time I started modeling as well, which doesn't really go together as you know sometimes. I think it's changed now, but when I was modeling, it didn't really go hand in hand.
And you were saying you were in Paris. I feel like it's very much smoke cigarettes and like drink coffee and it's like everything that we preach against.
Yeah. And it's in a way like it's a good thing, but it was sad because I did get to a point where like I decided that I couldn't stay in that industry or pursue it further because it didn't go with what I like my health goals and like what I was trying to do with my own life. And so I did go, I went overseas and I had a really great experience and it was awesome. And there are times where like I look back on it, I'm like, I'm so glad I had that experience. But yeah, like at the time I probably, was smoking and like, like not eating very much. And I felt like a lot of pressure to stay quite thin. And I was so thin because I had all these health problems because I wasn't healthy. And I was kind of doing stuff that was going against me getting healthier. So
and you just worked on fixing your gut and then it's like you're doing the worst things for it.
Absolutely. And then the immense like guilt I felt from that as well, like for my own body, like how much it had been through. And then I was then like putting myself through more of it. And it also like it made me quite sad and like, you know, isolated because like I come from a family of like foodies and like I've always loved food and I was becoming very like fearful of food and I felt like, you know, between restrictive diets for healing my gut and then, you know, those kinds of, you know, environments that you're in modeling, food became like, which used to be my source of joy, became like a very scary thing. I decided I had to leave, and I came back and I got healthy and I finished my degree, and then, now I'm here.
I love that. And I think it's been a common theme amongst everyone who's been on the pod. It's like their passion and their drive came from a struggle in their life. And I think that is such an incredible message for anyone who doesn't know what they want to do and is struggling, because I feel like you look back on your life and be like, wow, it just all made sense. Like in the moment, it probably was so hard. I can imagine being at school and, you know, the judgment from young girls and, you know, not being able to be involved with everything. And then again, like having to go through that in Paris to being where you are now. It's just like, you can only see why you got there when you look back. And it's pretty magical that you're doing what you do now. And I feel like a lot of young girls do follow you and would be inspired by you, by what you do.
Thank
For
you.
sure.
Thank you. And likewise, so it's funny you say that, because like I always love, and I wanted to tell you this as well, is like how like you're very like true to like your authentic self and what you believe. And I would just want to tell you that you've inspired me recently, because because like you did a thing about your non-negotiables, and I recently have been like, you need to have like these kinds of non-negotiables with yourself, because they're so important, and it doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you like, not putting other people first. But I think, like being really true to like your authenticity in life is very, very important. So you've inspired me recently to kind of come up with these non-negotiables. And health is one of them for sure.
I think as well, like we are coming to the age, like our late 20s, and you start to be aware of what really matters to you. You don't want to follow the crowd as much, and you are more passionate about certain things. So, you know, maybe you do lose a few friends along the way, but if they don't understand your boundaries and your non-negotiables, then they probably weren't worth having in your life anyway.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And it's a hard thing to sit with, like especially if you're like a recovering people pleaser.
Oh my God. Put that on a t-shirt, honestly.
I know. Yeah.
So I wanted to jump into the next question. So if someone just was starting their wellness journey, what would be your advice for them when it comes to eating better?
Wow. Okay. I think start slow and lose the idea of perfection. I think that's the most important thing, because I think, like, I'm sure you feel like this too, like you look at social media and you think that like everyone's got this perfect diet and like, you know, like a what I eat in a day thing. And I really like them because I think they can be quite inspiring. But they can be dangerous too, because, you know, sometimes we compare ourselves naturally to how other people eat, and we think this like one perfect day is how like this person might eat every day, or like how I should be eating. And I think letting go of that perfectionism with your diet is really, really important, because no one has a perfect diet, and there is no such thing. And your diet will change according to like where you are at in your life, like, you know, what stage of your cycle you're in. If you're a female, if you've had a really stressful week, you might find that like you have a week where like you don't really focus on your diet, and like obviously that's not great long term, but it's okay. Like, we're humans, and it's about what we do most of the time. And I think taking the pressure off yourself to be perfect is really, really important. And then I think the second thing too when it comes to diet is to get yourself educated. So like be inquisitive, but understand that there is no right way. So like, for instance, if you look at like veganism, or you look at the paleo diet, or you look at all these different ways of eating, it causes like quite a lot of internal conflict with some people, because they think, oh, I must be a vegan to be healthy, or no, actually I need to be like low carb. And, you know, there's so much out there. And I think just accepting that like all different foods have different benefits and can fit into your diet, and you don't have to subscribe to like a certain way of eating. And if you do as well, then that's also okay, as long as it works for you and you're comfortable with it. And I think that would be like my two starting points with your diet.
Well, I definitely think, like, from my own journey and experience, it's the trial and error. So it's like you try different things, you see what works for you. Like, as a bio individuality, it's so important. And again, like on the What I Eat in a Day videos, I love them as well, and I love creating them because I feel like it inspires people, and you can see that certain people I think for me, being a model and what I enjoy watching about them is being like, oh, they actually do eat. I know it sounds so stupid, but for me, it's like I assume that person just doesn't eat all day. And it's like important, I think, for people to see like that nourishment is everything. Like it's the best medicine for you.
Yeah.
And just seeing like a diverse plate and people eating carbs and people eating meat or whatever it is that you choose, I think it can be inspiring in that way. And that's why I like making them myself. But I think as well, when it comes to starting your health and fitness journey, and when it comes to diets, just eating whole foods, like go back to basics, like that simple recommendation just to eat the outskirt of the supermarket. Like that is such a simple tip.
It's such a good tip. And I'm like, if it comes like less packaged stuff. So like if you're going down the aisles, like you don't want to be filling up most of your trolley with things down the aisles. And it doesn't mean you can't eat them either. And that's like that mindset thing as well. It's true. Like I think we do go too far now. It's like never eat a processed food ever. And like I'm very much a Whole Foods girly like you. Like I go to the markets to shop. Like I barely go to the supermarket. I think I go to get yogurt and like my almond milk sometimes.
Well, the problem is like I'll go to the health emporium and I spend like $100 on a small bag of food and I'm like, okay. I think again, it's like certain things you're gonna, like your frozens and stuff like that, you can get at the supermarket and that's fine. But I just think it's a good rule of thumb. Because I have to say, when I first started my health and fitness journey, I would be obsessed with the health aisle and think that everything there is healthy because it's in the health aisle. Then I started discovering like vegetable oil and all this and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much like, I guess, greenwashing in the fact of like health and nutrition that I didn't even know until I started reading labels. So I think, just try like less processed and fresh. And there's been so many studies that you just naturally consume less calories when you do that anyway. Like those foods that are in a packet have been scientifically made to make you just eat and not feel full.
And your body doesn't recognize them, right? Because they don't occur in nature. Well, as if you're going to eat a whole food, so like you're eating a whole slice of rye sourdough bread. You know, it's got fiber in it. Like it's going to keep you full. You're probably going to eat less than if you were eating this refined, you know, low carb, skinny bread. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's so crazy, the labels on our food now. I'm just like, oh my God. And the amount of podcasts I listen to, it makes you like doubt the entire world. You're like, what is going on? We've just gone so far from what we're meant to be. No matter what diet you choose, like we have gone far, I think, as in the Western diet. And I'm just happy that there's people like you putting a good voice online.
Thank you.
And I also think it's important, when you were saying, like, if you are on your health and fitness journey, follow people who are inspiring and give good health tips, because that can really help keep you accountable.
Absolutely. And also, like, know too, and this is another little tip, is like, not like there are some processed foods, for instance, like canned beans. They're processed, but they're actually awesome for you. You know what I mean? So like not all processed foods are bad for you. Minimally processed foods are like canned beans are like pretty good for you. So I think,
I mean, olive oil's processed and that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you don't have to be like, I can't ever eat processed foods. It's like those like skinny breads or like low fat yogurts or things like that. Like they're the things to be a little bit mindful of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we were talking a lot about the day on the plate, and your day on the plate is so beautiful. And I need to ask you, do your plates always look beautiful? Like, are you someone who's super aesthetic all the time?
Thank you so much. No. But to be honest too, like I'm a bit of a weirdo. Like my partner at the time would like laugh at me because I'd be like by myself, like during COVID, because I was so bored, and I'd be like plating my own food, like putting little herbs on it. And I think for me, like I think I'm very creative, and I think my creative outlet has always been like food.
Yeah.
Well, it's like some people like paint and like sing and do music. Like I'm very sciencey, but that's kind of like my creative outlet. So I genuinely like love doing that, because I think so. My biggest thing with food is I think food is one of the most important signs of self-love we can show to ourselves. So I think the more colorful and more beautiful your plate is, the more you're going to be connected with your meal. And I think that kind of trumps a lot more than just like, what is your meal? And I think how you feel about your food is, it's so much more important than like the ingredients sometimes. Because for instance, like I remember times when I was younger and I was eating so clean, like ridiculously clean. I had no room for, like have fun foods and things, that everything was very structured. And I feel like the healthiest I've ever been is when I have balance, and I'm of course eating all these beautiful whole foods and like nourishing my body, and I'm aware of my diet, but I'm not obsessing over the nitty gritty, and I have more of a connection to where the food comes from. So I think, I love plating food because I just love beautiful, fresh quality produce, like market produce, and I think that I love celebrating it. So I feel like it's like I have to celebrate it.
I love that so much that you said that, because I'm going to be honest here, if I'm filming on a day, I'm definitely more like picturesque off my plate. But like just before, I was like rushing to get breakfast in before you arrived. So it was just like chuck everything on the plate and see what happens. And like, it's nice to hear that you genuinely do make your plates look so beautiful.
I definitely have disastrous moments.
I feel like I'm just always rushing. Like, so sometimes it's just disaster. And for me as well, because I just moved in with Tom, it's more important that I get the dishes clean after, because I don't want to leave dirty dishes around.
Yeah. Do you clean as you're cooking?
Yeah, like, absolutely. Yeah. I have to.
I know. I hate it. Like, that's the worst thing, is like finishing a meal and then you're like, I'm so relaxed. I'm so happy. I just had the best meal ever. And then you look at the sink and you're like, oh, like I don't want to do that now.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. I can't go back and clean. I feel like my relaxation is sitting down after a big day with my big plate of food and just enjoying it.
Yeah.
But living with a boy is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
They just like are messy and they leave the plates there, and I'm like, are you going to clean that up?
Yeah.
I don't want to be annoying, but like, are you going to clean that?
Yeah. Now, because I live alone now, and it's like, honestly, the best thing ever when it comes to cleaning up, because you're like, if I want to leave all that there, I will do it, and it's like my mess, but then I still never do it because I'm like you, like I have to clean as I cook.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'll jump on to the next question, which we kind of touched about, like your my non-negotiables, but what are your non-negotiables when it comes to health and fitness?
Well, I think health, I would say firstly, like you have to prioritize like your needs, I guess. So like if you know that like certain things don't make you feel good, for instance, like I think there's a lot of pressure now with like drinking, and I think people are becoming like a little bit more inquisitive about drinking less, or like reducing their alcohol, or like, being sober. And like I'm not sober, and I love a glass of wine from time to time.
Well, it pairs so beautifully sometimes with the food. Like
it really does.
I'm the exact same. I've kind of touched on it on the channel, but I don't like labeling things, because then there's guilt involved if I do have a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
But I've only like had one glass of wine this year. But this weekend I'm going to a beautiful restaurant and I might have a glass of wine, and I just don't like associating rules. I think that for me, maybe because I have had disordered eating in the past, when there's any restrictions, that's quite triggering for me.
Absolutely, because it triggers that guilt cycle, right? Because you go, I didn't do this thing that I said that I don't do, and I've gone and done it, and now I feel guilty about it, and then it triggers the cycle. And I think if you genuinely know what you like, and what you don't like. So, for instance, if you love a glass of wine from time to time, and you want to enjoy it, but you want to enjoy it in a more healthy way, share it with friends, like you and Tom, like going for a beautiful dinner, like, make it social, like share it with your partner, like have it with a beautiful meal, appreciate it, like your body is less stressed, you enjoy it, and it's less likely to have toxic effects on your health. I think there's a lot of peer pressure now about, keeping up, or like, there's people can judge you if you decide not to drink. And I think so my number one rule for non-negotiable is like, stick to what you believe in, and that's not being preachy. It's just like, if you don't feel like you want to do a certain thing that, society is telling you, like, you don't necessarily have to do it. And I think that that's probably one of my biggest, non-negotiables, because you can be influenced by what's around you. And even I do, like, sometimes I'll, look at other people's what I eat in a day, and I'm a nutritionist, and I'll be like, oh, like I didn't eat enough carbohydrates today. I didn't do this, like, I didn't drink enough water. And like, I think it's good to let the thoughts come in and like analyze them and be like, what are they trying to teach me? Like, what am I trying to get from this? And rather than judging them, like, kind of just like let them come and just like let them go. And I think, yeah, so with health, anything health related, it's like focus on you and take inspiration from what everyone else or what other people are saying. What's my other non-negotiable? I can't even think of it. Oh, this is a really good one. One of my other non-negotiables is if you don't like it, it's not going to work for you. So this kind of goes off the other thing. There's a lot of like kind of like talk out there about like you need to eat a certain way, or like, you know, you need to start your day with a giant green smoothie full of all these powders and all these superfoods, and like, you know, I think that that's great and I've got nothing against it, and I even do that sometimes. But I think for anything with health, for it to work, you have to genuinely enjoy it. And I think if you're sitting down to a meal and you're dreading it and you're forcing yourself to eat it, or you're forcing yourself to take this new supplement, or, you know, have this meal because you think it's good for you, sometimes it's better off just having the real thing that you love. So, you know, if you love pasta, you know, you don't have to have, like, if you love zucchini noodles, that's great. I love zucchini noodles. But if you love pasta and you're forcing yourself to have zucchini noodles and you hate zucchini noodles, don't have it. It's not healthy. If you feel like if you feel weird about it, you feel like you're not enjoying it, then it's not healthy. And I think that's a really good, important lesson for your health, is like, you've obviously got to do things sometimes that we don't love. So I think, you know, we all have to eat vegetables. I definitely believe that. But find the ones that work for you, you know, and find the things in your health routine or your diet that work for you. And yeah, don't do things that you don't like.
I think it reminds me, my mum's one thing she always said is everything in moderation, everything in moderation. I grew up like that, so there was never restriction, but it was like, you know, if we were going to get fast food, it was once a week after we played soccer, not every night. And like, yeah, if you want pasta, first of all, I hate that pasta's now become like a cheap food and a bad food, because it's such a big part of the Mediterranean diet and it's so healthy. But yeah, again, just moderation, like not overeating and learning not to overeat, my biggest non-negotiable when it comes to diet, which Tom and I really practice, is eating to 80% full. Like that really simple one, because I feel like, you know, when we do go out for a pasta, or we just went to Soy in Bondi and we got so much delicious food, and, you know, it was deep fried and whatever it was, we just ate till 80%. Because then you just feel fine. And then there's always room for ice creams, which we got.
And it's so true. And it's like your body, when it's less stressed when you're eating, you make all these digestive enzymes, you know, and that's what helps you break down your food. So when you're less stressed, you make adequate amounts of these. When you're more stressed, it shuts this down, meaning that you don't digest your food the same way. And it's more likely to cause you gut issues or make you more tired and make you more stressed. And so I think, yeah, absolutely. Like eating till 80% full requires you to like be in tune with your body and like be present when you're eating. And I think that that's like a really good, rule, I would say.
Absolutely.
Food.
So I wanted to touch on protein. I feel like this is such a hot topic at the moment. And to be honest, like, I'm a bit overwhelmed. So I need to ask you, what do you recommend for women? Like, how many grams, and what are some ways that we can increase our protein?
Yeah. And I love that you said you're overwhelmed.
I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah,
because today I was listening to a podcast which was just vouching veganism hard. And I was like, And so then, like, just before I had like nuts instead of like eggs. But then I was like, am I full enough? I'm just confused.
And this is like a classic example of like all these different like movements or all this different information out there, right? And it makes you feel conflicted. You hear one thing and you're just like, oh, now I have to change how I'm eating again. And then you hear another thing, and protein's one of them. And I think we've definitely had protein, I wouldn't say deficiency, because the Western world isn't really actually that protein deficient. But we've had a lack of protein awareness. And I think what's happened is women especially, and people have started to, you know, we have a big fitness culture now, and I think people are trying to put on lean muscle mass and reduce, you know, unnecessary processed foods in their diet. So naturally the protein movement is kind of kicked in. And I think it's great, because I think, you know, being protein deficient is terrible, right? So like protein is really important for our body, because it is the building block of, you know, all tissue, our hair, our skin, our nails. It's made up of these tiny little amino acids, which are very, very important, not just for that, but like for brain chemistry. So protein is really, really important. And I think we do need to be mindful of our protein intake, but we don't need to be like obsessed with the gram. And I think that right now people are like, oh, like I need like 200 grams of protein a day, and like they count it, and it's like your body doesn't like count how many grams of protein that you're having. And what the recommendation is now is that we're trying to get about 30 grams per meal and spacing that across the day. And that's kind of a good way to go about with your protein. So for instance, if you're having like a palm-sized amount of protein with your food, that's easily 35 grams. So you've done that.
So that's easier than I thought.
If you are vegan or vegetarian, it can be a little bit more challenging. It might mean that you do need to be a little bit more aware of it. So, beans, for instance, like a cup of, chickpeas is probably like 7 grams of protein.
Wow. So it's not much.
But what you can do is whole grains actually have a heap of protein in it, and so do vegetables. So this is where like the vegan argument does come in, is like vegetables and carbs have protein in them. All plant foods do. And fiber, which is even more important. They have protein in them. So if you are to have a vegan meal, which I love, and I think everyone should have a vegetarian or vegan meal once a day, you can actually pair your beans, your legumes, with a whole grain, because they have different comparing amino acids, which actually like complement each other. So it's called amino acid protein pairing, and therefore you're getting like all the different kinds of amino acids which actually make these proteins complete. So for instance, like beans are like incomplete in protein, and a piece of like steak is complete in protein. So the steak has more amino acids than the chickpeas. So if you then mix your whole grains with your chickpeas, then you're kind of getting like the whole scope of the amino acids. But then the other thing I would say about protein is don't stress too much about it. As long as you're being mindful, you're getting it in, across your meals. You don't need to be drinking like protein shakes or having like, I saw the other day, protein water.
No, I saw that actually at Pilates. A girl had it. Yeah. But like, I was like, how?
Yeah, you don't need that.
And that would have chemicals in it for sure.
Yeah, and they're really like processed foods, right? So like you definitely don't need to have that. I think
it's sad, scary to think now what the marketing will go into like products like that.
Yeah.
That is so unhealthy and not good for your health.
Yeah. And the thing is like it's like protein brainwashing. And I think, protein is important. We need to be mindful of it. I think you should get your protein from a variety of sources. I don't think you just need to be eating animal protein for every meal. I think plants are really important too. So like ideally, like, getting, some yogurt in the morning if you're not dairy intolerant, and you can have Greek yogurt, that's great. Or some eggs, something like that. Some smoked salmon. Like I love smoked salmon. I saw you always eat smoked salmon.
Yeah, I love it. I'm like getting hungry.
Yeah, I know. I love like different toast combinations. Like you can kind of put, hummus and then some eggs, and like that's kind of like a good protein breakfast. And then for your lunch, like you might want to have tofu or tempeh or chickpeas. You don't have to have, animal protein. And then in the evening, like fish, like I love seafood, steak, chicken, like it all depends.
You cook a lot of lamb.
Me?
Yeah, I swear. I feel like you cook when you cook lamb, I'm like, oh my God, that looks so good.
I have actually been cooking a lot of lamb.
And
I think I'm through a lamb phase.
Yeah, I've never cooked it in my life because I was veggie and pescatarian for 8 years, so I never had cooked it before. So I'm getting inspired by you.
Oh, I'll give you a good recipe,
actually.
It's really good. And like, honestly, lamb backstraps, it's my favorite cut of lamb. It's so easy to cook. Like, it's easier than a steak. And it's like super lean and super delicious. And like, I love it. I'm so for it. But I think also another thing I want to say about protein is quality. So like, I think the argument too with the vegan thing is like, a lot of people are eating a lot of processed meats and food. But like processed meats in general, like, you don't know where it's come from. You don't know how the animal was treated. They're often filled with like a lot of chemicals, things like nitrates, stuff like that. So like if you're buying meat, like I always recommend, like it's hard sometimes to always buy organic, and I totally understand that, but you can get like grass-fed, free range, like now from Woolies, and it's quite affordable. And I think, I would just recommend like knowing where your protein comes from is really important, and just making sure like you're picking like, from like a humane source.
I think as well, like even if you do pay a premium for higher quality meat and fish, it makes you appreciate it a lot more. Like appreciate that it was a life. I think because I've come like from being vegetarian, I would rather pay more for it and have it like once a day and then have veggie meals for the other days, for the other meals, sorry. But I appreciate it. I think that's really important. Like it's worth spending for the good quality.
Absolutely. And then you eat it less too, because, you know, I think as a Western society, we all do need to reduce our red meat consumption, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be in your diet.
Yeah.
Obviously depending on how you eat. But yeah, so for instance, like if you are picking the more quality red meat, you're probably not going to buy it as often, meaning that you are going to appreciate it and you are really going to enjoy it. And then another really funny fact about that is, you know, a lot of people say like red meat is inflammatory. And that argument comes from something to do with omega-3 and omega-6. So that's why people tell you to eat seafood, because it's really high in omega-3, right? Again, it's got to do with the type. So you can actually find a piece of grass-fed steak that would have comparable levels of omega-3 to a piece of salmon.
Wow.
And it's got to do with what they feed the cattle. So if you're buying your meat that is like grass-fed, you know, not grain-fed, and it comes from a good farm, the grass that they actually feed the animal is really high in omega-3. So the nature of the meat is going to be better quality. So that's why, yeah, don't fear having meat. Just make sure the quality of your meat is good.
I feel like you've kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to say it because I feel like you will have some more tips in terms of the mindset. For me personally, when I reintroduced meat, the sad thing is that it started off as a sustainable choice to go vegetarian. But then as I started modeling and my career progressed, I started restricting more. And then I used that as a restricting method when I'd go out for food or be out with friends. And I just wanted to kind of touch on, if someone was wanting to reintroduce meat into their diet, what would be your tips? Obviously, you've kind of touched on like getting high quality and still having vegetarian meals throughout the day. But mindset, what would you tell them?
Start slow. I think anything with your health, like we said before, is like start slow and don't beat yourself up. And I think, again, like if you don't like something, it's hard to make yourself like it. So I think if you do really want to introduce meat again, just, yeah, start slow and find things that like are the least offensive. So you could start with, you know, chicken's always a good one. I think it's better to go for the white meats before you go for the red meat.
I went straight to the red meat.
Did
and
you?
My experience with eating meat was like crazy because I ate one mouthful and I couldn't stop thinking
You're
about
like
meat.
salivating.
Like
yeah.
I woke up in the morning and I wanted steak for breakfast. Like me and Tom met like a few weeks after I just reintroduced meat into my diet, and now it's like our full thing that we finding the best steaks. Like for Valentine's Day, taking me to Bistecca, which is apparently like this amazing steak. It's just so crazy how you can change. It's just like once I ate it, this is my personal experience, so don't grill me. My experience was as soon as I ate it, it was like my body was like, I needed this. I needed the iron. I needed all the vitamins that was in this. And yeah, that was my personal experience. But I definitely didn't go slow. Once I had a mouthful, I was like wanting it all the time.
I love that. I'm so glad you did that, because I would be the same. Like I'd go straight for the steak because I've been vegetarian too before and I went straight for the steak. But I think, yeah, it freaks some people out. But it's so funny how your body reacted to it, right? You were like, I need this. Like
I've always been super low in iron, and I've always been told I do need to eat red meat, and it's quite interesting, like the body responded in that way.
Yeah, so I think that even just like answers the question, right? It's like, if you don't know where to start, just start eating it, because you might find, like that you love it. Your body's like, I actually need this, right? Another good way you could do it too is like finding ways to like hide it slowly. I mean, I don't think we should like hide up. Yeah, bolognese.
I'm going tonight to my auntie for bolognese.
Oh, yum.
They've made the same recipe since I was a kid.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah.
It's a secret.
No, it's a secret. She won't even send it to me.
Does she put milk in it? That's a thing.
No, because I'm dairy intolerant.
Oh, okay.
Red wine.
Apparently that's a thing. I've only learnt this. You put milk in bolognese. I know.
I don't want it anymore.
I'm jealous you're going to Bistecca though.
Oh my
I
God.
want to come.
I know, it's like a 200-person wait list apparently at all times. And the only time we could get in for our Valentine's Day dinner was 2:30 p.m. So we're doing dinner then, but we
It's
like
dunch.
that.
That's my new thing.
Dunch.
Dunch. Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're making
Dinner.
it a thing.
Yeah,
Dunch.
it's like brunch, but it's dunch. Yeah.
It's like, do you want to go for dunch?
Yeah.
I love
It's a
that
terrible
because
word.
I love finishing eating by like 6. So like dunch
Yeah.
is perfect.
Yeah, because you got time to digest before you go to bed. You don't
I'm
feel
a
it.
duncher on the weekend.
Yeah.
I dunch on the weekend,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love a dunch on the weekend.
Well, I think you answered that pretty well. Like, you got to go slow, maybe try hide it, and maybe start with chicken.
Yeah.
Or maybe just go straight in.
Just go straight for the steak. Go to Bistecca. Order a
Go all in.
yeah.
So, hormone health.
Yeah.
This is another massive topic at the moment. I feel like there's been a big wave of people going off the birth control pill and seeing changes in their hormones, people with infertility. And I've actually received quite a few DMs from people in the self-dom community about losing their period. And I thought you'd be a really good person to ask about, is there a way you can eat to help regulate your cycle? And how should we be eating during the different stages?
That's such a great question. And we're still learning so much about it. So we don't have a lot of evidence on it. Like historically, women haven't really been studied in science. So we're only just kind of doing these studies now. One, because we have a menstrual cycle, so it's actually really hard for them to control these studies. It's so much easier to study a man who's just got like a 24-hour testosterone cycle. We have so many hormones at play, right? And yeah, so many women now are like coming off the pill and like regaining their cycle, and they're finding that it's either like a bit of a struggle for it to come back, or they're coming across some like symptoms or some issues. And I think we live in a world now where like there is a lot of endocrine disruptors out there, and your endocrine is your system which controls your hormones, right? So there's a lot of things out there which are disrupting our hormones.
Can you tell me some things that would be disrupting our endocrine?
Yes, so there's a few. Some of the known ones actually are like carcinogens, things like PFAs, so plastics, PEGs. And it's hard to avoid them because, I hate to be scary, but they are like around us all the time. And I think looking at your skincare routine is probably one of the best ways to reduce them, because so many of the products we use are full of these things. And I don't think you need to freak out if you use like a nice product once in a while, but the face cream you put on your skin every day, like I think that's something where you could start like looking, because there are lists of ingredients and you can look them up online.
There's all these apps now where you can like scan the barcode.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing.
Yes. Oh, there's one, I forgot the name of it, but maybe we can put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll
but
put it in the notes.
it's amazing because it's so good. It does that.
Suki or something?
Yeah, I think it's
Or
Suki.
Yuki?
Yuki or Suki.
So some one of these.
One
We'll
of
put it
those.
in the notes.
Yeah.
But also, I think, again, just as you said, stress is the worst thing for you. I see people who get so obsessive, scanning everything, and it's like there needs to be a level where acceptance is there, but
And that also leads into the second thing with a hormone disruptor, which is stress. And I think that is number one.
Well, you see some people who can just go along their life, like eating whatever they want, like, but they're just stress free. So I feel like their body's like, whatever, your digestion's perfect. But then sometimes, like, girlies like us who are aware of what's good for you, our stresses are through the roof, our cortisol's through the roof, because we're like, oh my God, we're having seed oil in our almond milk. And, you know what I mean?
We're like houseplants. You need like perfect conditions to thrive.
But
and,
we
like,
get
sometimes
there.
you need to adjust things to like, keep the environment healthy, and we get there.
I love that metaphor. That's cute.
But I think, stress is number one. And like a lot of people I see in clinic, young women and older women too, like who lose their cycle, it's stress. And there's a couple of things that cause this, and it's, physical stress is one, and emotional and mental stress is one. And, it's very common with stress because it basically shuts down our whole system. It shuts down the connection between our pituitary gland to our ovaries, so it doesn't release an egg, so we don't ovulate. And essentially, as a female menstrual cycle, whether it's like 21, 28 days, is that we have a point where we ovulate. And that is what actually stimulates the bleed. So if you're not ovulating, you're not going to bleed. And, when you're mentally stressed, it's going to obviously prevent that. I would say another big stress, and that's a very common one nowadays, is underfueling and, under eating. And, when you pair that with the stress and an energy imbalance, so you're not eating as much, your body is then going to go, I can't have a period because I don't want to have a baby. It's not the right time. It's not a good time to reproduce. So it's going to shut that down. And then I would say a third one would also be over-exercise. So I think now we live in the day where it's like berries and HIIT, and I've got nothing against those. I love them, and I've also loved them too much in the past. But too much of something, like your mum said, everything moderation, because too much of something can cause excess cortisol in the body. And we know that excess cortisol, which is the stress hormone, can suppress ovulation and the menstrual cycle. So I would say if you are finding that, you do have these irregular periods, it's really important that you go and get some help with it and some support, because the cause of missed periods is so unique. So I've had people who have been they've cut out all their intense exercise, they've just been walking, they've been eating heaps, and their period just hasn't come back. And that causes a heap of mental stress, right? Because you're like, I'm doing everything, why isn't it coming back?
And I think also it's hard because, if you do enjoy going to the Barry's workouts and you're cutting out doing things that you love to get your period back. So yeah, it's just such a catch-22.
It's such a catch-22. And then I find that it's funny, sometimes I have to say to these clients, I'm like, why don't you go to your Barry's once a week? I mean, this might be controversial, but why don't you go to your Barry's once a week and then do a lot more walking and do 1 or 2 Pilates, and just keep it really simple. Don't not do something you love, and let's increase your intake of food, but not to the point where it's you're feeling sick and you feel like it's too much. Let's just get you eating regularly, and let's put in some beautiful hormone loving foods in there. And
what sort of things would that be?
So beautiful, healthy fats and carbohydrates. I think a lot of people avoid these foods.
I think women as well. I feel like our whole life we've been taught to eat salad and that's it. It's been so glamorized to just have a Niçoise salad.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we eat. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's so. I think a big shift for me for the last 2 years is just there's so much more to food than just having a salad.
Absolutely.
There's flavor, joy, it brings community together, and when you bring community together, you're less stressed. And then I feel like that would have a beautiful flow-on effect to your cycle and your hormones
and really practical things too. Because a lot of girls, for instance, really love their lunch salad, right? But I'm like, why don't you have a slice of gluten-free or sourdough toast with it?
I honestly love just chucking rice.
Rice, yeah.
I'm guilty. I love the 40-second rice in the microwave.
I love it.
I'm sorry, I'm a fan.
I'm such a fan. I love it. No, I do. And
okay.
Again, it's with your health. It's if it's convenient and it's going to mean that you're going to eat this whole bowl of salad, then it's fine, right?
And I also really love the salad series I'm seeing a lot. Did you do one yourself? I'm not sure.
I did a little one.
Yeah,
I should do more of them.
I really love because people incorporate edamame noodles and soba noodles or buckwheat noodles in the salad with your with actual edamame, chopped carrot. There's so much more to salad.
Yeah.
And I think I've been guilty in the past. I still love a tuna salad. I probably have it 3 times a week. But if I'm having that for lunch, then for dinner I'll mix it up and not have a salad as well.
Yeah, and have some don't be afraid to have some a rice, a rice dish with vegetables cut up in it. You don't have to be eating these low carb meals, throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset is what plays into that this whole issue with the menstrual cycle too, because I think a lot of people are trying to eat the way that they think they should be, and it's actually causing a lot of stress to their body.
Yeah.
And then you have all these people on the other end of the spectrum who are doing all the things and they're still not getting their period back. And I think that's why I just think it's such a complex thing. And I think you need to look at the root cause for you, because I found sometimes with some people is that they've just gone and focused less on being perfect, and that's immediately lowered their stress and their period came back. And then other people were not that stressed mentally, but were maybe not nourishing themselves enough and avoiding, certain foods. And then they've brought that back in and their periods come back. So I think you have to be really patient. You've got to be really consistent and get support, because it's hard to do it alone. And sometimes you need someone just kind of being there to egg you on and keep you going. And yeah, it can be very disheartening when it's not coming back. And I think, it's good to hear other people's stories and get support with it as well.
And I love kind of what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if clients did see you about this, you have a very mind-body connection. You're talking about stress, you're talking about mindset, you're talking about slowing down. It's not just about what you eat. So if if there are any girls who would want to see you about this, is this something you can...
Absolutely, yeah. So this is like, that's definitely what I do, and it's one of my areas.
Amazing.
And like in my new gut reset too, it's like something that we like talk about as well, is because it's a therapeutic diet, but it's only for a specific amount of time, and it actually gets you back into eating normally again. So like the last week, for instance, we talk about like allowing these foods to come back in, and we kind of like differentiate between like, you know, what is a therapeutic and what is a fad diet. So a fad diet being like low carb, you know, none of this, none of that, whereas this is more of a therapeutic diet. And if I tell you to cut something out, it's not because these foods are bad for you, it's for a specific purpose, and we're going to actually bring them back in. And I think it's the same with the mental side of it. We're like, if I tell you to restrict something, it's not because we're trying to restrict you from this food, it's to get a specific result, and then I really want you to bring it back in. And I think, yeah, that's definitely something that I help people with, is like, yeah, their mindset around how they're eating, and like where they can like kind of, you know, yeah, kind of bring things back in and not worry too much. I think that's like
Yeah, because I definitely have seen like online a lot more people doing the carnivore diet, and I think that the carnivore diet does have its place only for a short period of time to kind of relieve you of symptoms, but again, you've got to reintroduce everything back in. And I'm coming from someone who's had gut issues. I have intolerances, like, so I have been tempted to do these, I would say they're restrictive diets, just to then be able to re-add them in.
Yes.
So I definitely will have to take a look at your gut reset program and everything that you have.
Yeah.
Because I think I really need it. I'm at the point now where I'm like, I'm kind of over feeling like crap every time I go to a restaurant.
Yeah, and it's like your gut. So for instance, a lot of gut problems are to do with the bacteria and your gut lining. And it's like when your gut is essentially, it's like a road, and like a road that hasn't been redone for a while gets potholes in it, right? And it means that like all the contents that are in your gut is going to go into your bloodstream and like trigger inflammation, and it's kind of like constantly getting irritated. So sometimes you need to bring foods out to allow it to like heal, and then you can bring these foods back in essentially. And yeah, sometimes you do need to do a little reset, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like these foods are bad for you. And again, that goes into the whole like fad dieting thing, is like if you go low carb or low grain, or you go carnivore, it's maybe you're doing it to get something fixed, you know, in your body, but it doesn't mean that you need to do that long term.
Yeah, I love that so much. My next kind of topic I wanted to touch on was this idea that eating healthy is expensive and time consuming. What are 3 tips you would give to someone to kind of be like, do this and it will be easy, and not easy, but you know, you'll be able to do it?
Okay. So I have a thing, and it's called KISS. It's Keep It Simple, Stupid. It's like my acronym.
Yeah.
So although sometimes like I love creating like crazy plates of food and where I think out all these different elements, but I think the key to healthy eating that's affordable and easy to do is just keeping it simple. So like you don't have to make it crazy. Like honestly, if putting a tray of vegetables into the oven and roasting them with like really delicious spices, like go and invest in like just really good spice mixes, you will make any meal more interesting and delicious without putting in any extra effort, right? So like you literally can just like put them all over your vegetables, stick it in the oven, and then you can change that every day, and like you have a different meal every day.
Do you recommend buying like a mix? Like, you know, you can get like your paprika, your coriander seeds, whatever they are. Would you recommend just getting them already mixed for someone who's new to...
Yeah, I think so. I think
it takes it, because for me, I get overwhelmed by my spice cupboard.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's too overwhelming. It's too olive oil, salt,
and then you
pepper.
don't use them, and then they're just like sitting there. Yeah.
I think, but I recently did like a Marley spoon. I tried it and it was already mixed, and I was like, this is great. Like this chicken was amazing, and like all the veggies were so good. This isn't plugged, by the way.
But it's true.
But
like,
it was.
Those meal kits are great, right? Because they introduce you to all these different spice mixes that you didn't necessarily know.
So I think that's a great tip. It's like adding different spices to your veggies and just chucking them in the oven. So cheap and simple.
So cheap and simple. And a second thing I'd say is canned food. I love canned food. I'm such a fan of it.
I used to get paid out at school because I loved canned food. I'd bring canned beans, canned corn, canned tuna.
Why would they pay you out?
Because it's like, you know, kids, like you bring in a can and you're opening your can for lunch and eating it with a spoon.
Yeah. Kids are mean, man.
Kids are mean.
I feel like that would be the coolest kid ever to be my kid.
Like, I don't give a fuck energy.
Yeah, I love canned food. I think it's amazing, and it's actually, just as healthy. So canned legumes are like awesome. They're full of fiber. You can get salt reduced ones now, like if you're trying to watch your sodium. You just, obviously baked beans is probably not the best one, but like just plain white beans or chickpeas, like they're awesome. They're
and
cheap.
no spaghetti in a can, obviously.
No spaghetti in a can.
That's my childhood.
Make the spaghetti. Have it as a treat, but like make the spaghetti for
I think that's an awesome tip. I don't think many people talk about canned food because it's like a stigma, But I think it's great, and I think people are super time poor. If there's a way to like not have to cook your beans from scratch, like why not?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't even cook my beans from scratch. I think I've done it like twice in the last 2 years.
And she's a clinical nutritionist.
But no one got time for that.
Exactly.
I think another thing I would say is prep. So like I'm not, funnily enough, I'm not the biggest fan of meal prep, and it's only because I don't like to know what I'm going to be eating a week in advance. A lot of people love that, and I totally respect it.
I like to know. I'm one of those. I actually am quite into my prepping. Like in terms of just like, or even like if I'm cooking dinner, I'll make extra portion for the next day.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I find really helpful when I'm time poor.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I then end up just going, like I have my healthy cafes in my area that I know don't use seed oils, that I know I could kind of make at home. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
But I am just trying to be better at eating at home more.
So what I love about that, and this is how I do it, is I do like mini meal preps. So it's actually just like what I make for dinner, I make 2 days extra. So I'm not going out of my way to do a big Sunday meal prep.
Oh no, that's too much.
Yeah, so because that I like, for me, I couldn't stand that, right? Like thinking of like what I have to make for like the entire week. I almost find it stressful. Some people love it, and I totally respect that. I think it's so cool. I kind of wish I was like that sometimes, but like I just think if you're going to be making dinner in the evening, like buy an extra sweet potato and an extra piece of salmon, right? And put it on the same tray with the food that you're making, which means you have lunch the next day, and you're way less likely to go out for lunch because you've made more at dinner.
And those are things you can mix up too. Like you can have that salmon and sweet potato in a different like bowl or Buddha bowl. You could have like a wrap or whatever it is. Like you can mix up how you're eating those ingredients.
Yeah.
I just know what you mean. Like those people who meal prep in a container in the fridge for the week.
Yeah.
I also think, just as you said, like you don't know what you're going to feel like. And by Friday, you probably won't feel like the same thing. And I actually think it might be detrimental to you achieving your health goals. Because I also think a big part, you correct me if I'm wrong, of course, with gut health is like diversity and mixing it up. So, having like the salmon and potatoes the next day, that's fine. But you don't want to have salmon and potatoes 5 days straight.
Exactly. And I think a good thing too is like if you've got, for instance, like a whole Tupperware of quinoa cooked, you've got a whole thing of washed lettuce, you've got a whole thing of roasted vegetables, you can then like kind of mix and match it the next day to make it into a different meal, and then you haven't made another meal, if that makes sense. Like you just kind of changing your food combinations to make it more interesting. So that's like what I do. So a lot of the recipes I come up with are like made from my leftovers from dinner, and I would never I hadn't told anyone that until now. But it's funny, like I feel like it encourages you to also like be creative too, because you've kind of got what you have in the fridge. And then you kind of like have to kind of, mix and match it. Because like I don't want to eat the same thing every day as well. So I find leftovers are the best. So cook more at dinner. And, and that's use your leftovers.
Such a simple tip, honestly. So my last question, it wouldn't be a self-done podcast without talking about mindset. I think it is so important. And even just hearing you speak, you clearly have an amazing connection to yourself and your inner world. So what are some ways that you nourish your mind?
So I have recently started breath work, and you actually inspired me to do that. Yeah. That's something I've neglected for a really long time. I've always done stuff for my mind. So for me, like my mindfulness has always been like I get up in the morning and I go for a really long walk. I love it. Like it's my
We've seen each other many times on that promenade.
Yeah. One time Dom saw me with coffee spilt halfway down my top.
But you didn't even know. That was the best.
Know.
I was like, oh, you've got quite a big stain on the front of you.
Because I was in my mindfulness.
I
was so
present
away with the fairies that I spilt coffee halfway down my top, and it wasn't Dom. If it wasn't for Dom, I would have been walking around Bondi with coffee all down my top. Anyway.
So you got to only wear black.
Yeah, only wear black. It's funny because I only wear black. And
Yeah,
it was like the one day.
time.
Yeah. No, so I think, yeah, for me, like I've always, got up in the morning, like I have like my coffee or my matcha or whatever I'm having that day. And I will like go for a walk, and I love that. And that's always been, my thing. And I've always gone, I exercise, and that's always been my mindfulness too. Like I love my runs, but I've always neglected that side of things.
Just slowing down, I think. A lot of us neglect because we think we're too busy to slow down, which is just so crazy.
And you're not as productive, that's the thing. You think you're more productive when you're like killing it and you're being a boss woman and you're like kind of getting all the to-do list done, which is what I'm guilty of. Like I'm classic Capricorn. Like I'm like work. And I have neglected that time for breathing. So I've recently introduced that, and I cannot tell you how many changes I have noticed.
Wow.
Like it's crazy. And I was one of those people who used to be like, that's woo-woo. Like, and I'm like, it's not woo-woo. It's
not
at all. Like it's so important. So yeah, I've started doing that. I've started doing like 5 minutes, like in the evening before bed. I'm trying to do the morning as well. But yeah, making it like a really like small goal, so it's like really achievable, has been really good for me too. So like not being like, I'm going to meditate for 2 hours. I'm like, I'm going to just do breath work for 5 minutes, and then I can then go and do this and whatever.
Yeah, it's a really grounding practice, and it really makes you present. And I feel like throughout your day, you're aware of different things, and then that allows you to be more productive. I've had some of my greatest ideas during a meditation. Like they just come to me. It's so crazy. Like even with the podcast and everything like that, it just allowed me to stop caring about judgment and failing and all these negative self-talk, because you become aware of the self-talk and you kind of see it like as if you're looking from another perspective to you, and you're like, stop being so silly. Like as I've said many times, like meditation and breathwork has completely changed my life. Like, and definitely of course gratitude, like just mindfulness. I think it's so important. I think it's above health and fitness. Well, I mean, it's health, but I think it's above like diet and fitness.
Completely. And like that's what I mean. Like I'm a nutritionist, and I thought like what I do is like that's like the paramount to your health, and I'm like incredibly humbled by how much it's changed my life. And like almost kind of like, why haven't I, like I work in the health industry, and it's like something that I have neglected, and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, because without your nervous system being regulated, without the awareness, without all these like strategies we have now, whether it's meditation, breathing, like I don't think you can be your healthiest self. I really do believe that now, and I totally get why people talk about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Brooke, you shine. You're amazing. Where can the Self-Dom community find you?
Oh, so you can find me. I've got a website. It's my name with nutrition on the end. So brookekellynutrition.com. And then on Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, I post a lot of my recipes on Instagram. So if you
she doesn't gatekeep, which is really nice, because I feel like some people never share their recipes, and I'm like,
so if you can find them there, but you can also find them on my website too. Which, if you want them in like longer form, they're there.
And then you do the whole plan as well. You do the gut reset. Yeah. Do you have a hormone?
I've got a gut reset, and I've got another cookbook. So if you want even more recipes, I've got a cookbook called Serious Salads, which is just salads.
Yes.
It's salads for yourself. It's salads for
But they're nourishing and like filling.
Yeah.
As we said, they're not just like uniswa salad.
Oh yeah. We've got like celebration salads in there for like, I had it at Christmas. Like, yeah, like it's super fun. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much.
Thank you for having me.
If you guys loved this episode, make sure you put it on your stories. I love seeing that. It warms my heart so much. And of course, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff. And I can't wait to see you all on the next episode. See ya.